Let me know if you're able to see me and hear me okay. Okay, it seems to be fine. Perfect. All right, so if you're not able to hear me during the stream, let me know and I'll try to correct as I go. All right, so today I just wanted to hop on and just talk about how to avoid muddy colors. This was brought up from one of my students in the academy, and just wanted to share that this is a very common problem. Now, there may be few categories which it may fall under. For example, it would like if you it can happen to a complete beginner like who's just starting out and they find themselves falling into having more muddy colors. And the next category would be who's been painting for a while, and who has done quite a bit of work, and yet they're able to see some muddy colors on their canvas. Now, these are two separate categories, so I just wanted to separate them out. But at the end, I'm just going to bring it back. But first, I would like to talk to people who are just starting out, who are absolute beginners, who have just ventured into oil painting. And I had few questions from yesterday, so I'll also answer them here. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer in the next 15 to 20 minutes. So, if you are an absolute beginner and if you're having this issue of having muddy colors, right? So, let's break it down into a very simple language. So, when you have a muddy color, it means that you have mixed two or three more colors and it's moved away from these secondary or tertiary colors. Like we all know, we have three primaries. So we have the blue, we have the red, and the yellow. So those are the three primary colors. The next would be the secondary colors, which you get by mixing these primaries like blue and yellow and red and blue, right? So those are your secondary colors. The next would be your tertiary colors, where you mix one more step down and it starts moving into the gray area. So you have the grayish blue, you have the grayish red, you have the grayish yellow, grayish green, grayish maroon. Um, so all the grays are in your tertiary. Now, if you go one more step down, which means that you mix a tertiary with another color, you almost get a color which has completely grayed down. It doesn't matter if it's a warm or cool gray, but it's completely grayed down. All right. So the main reason I don't specifically teach color charts is that people tend to overcomplicate this uh, theory. Like you can mix any color with just three primaries, right? You can mix any color from red, blue, and green. So the only reason I have more on my palette is that it's much quicker and it's much easier for me to get there. But for the first 3 to 4 years, I just started out with the basic primaries: the blue, the greens, the blue, the yellow, and the red. Okay, so now that we know that the main issue of getting the muddy colors is that you have moved beyond the tertiary. So you have gone one step further down for having another color which is like beyond your color chart, right? Now, this may not have been your intention. Like it may not have been your intention that to get that color, but it happened, right? So the main issue why this comes about is that there are only two places that it can happen on. So the way I like to express is that I want to keep it as simple as possible. So the only two places muddy colors can happen is either on your palette or on your canvas. And you need to spend equal amount of time on your palette as much as you do on your canvas. But beginner painters, what they do is that they spend a lot of time on the canvas. They don't spend a lot of time on the palette, which means that all the paint that they use is getting recirculated within the canvas. They're not going back to the palette enough. Okay, so this is one of the main reasons why you end up getting that one step down beyond your tertiary paints. All right, so you need to go back to your palette as much as possible, which means that you need to end your stroke, you need to end your brush stroke and keep it under 2 or 3 strokes. If you go beyond that, you are going to get a muddy color, because at that point, all you're doing is that you're reusing the paint what's already there, right? So 2 or 3 strokes is the maximum that you need to complete that stroke and to complete whatever paint you have on your brush, right? Because the brush is the only constant here. That's the only constant between your palette and your canvas, because that's the only one that's going between back and forth. Okay, so you need to complete your stroke under 2 or 3. If you're not done, that's fine. After that, you have to go back to your palette. And then when you go back to your palette, you need to make sure that your brush is clean. You need to wipe off the excess. You don't have to even use a medium or a thinner. Even just wipe off the excess with your paper towel, and that should be okay. So just wipe off after your stroke and mix the paint again, or just pick up the paint again. Hello. One minute, guys. I'm just seeing what the issue is here. Okay, it seems we are back. Okay, it seems we are back. I'm sorry about that. Okay, are you guys able to hear me still? Just say yes or no. I'm hoping you can. So I'm just going to go forward. All right. So where was I? Yeah. So you need to go back to your palette and you need to wipe your brush when you go, and you need to load the paint again. Now, the reason I don't recommend pre-mixing your paint is that anything can happen during your painting process. Like, your painting is your guide, and you need not to refer more with your reference. You need to refer your painting as your guide as you go along. Again, this is a different topic altogether, but the main reason I don't want you all to pre-mix the paint is that even if you have a slight paint that is beyond whatever you have mixed over time, it's going to move past that tertiary point. Again, it may be very subtle, and for absolute beginners, you may not even know it at all, but that change happens quickly over time. So try to avoid pre-mixing the paints and just have it as is. Just do it again, and you can load 2 paints to form your mixture again, because the more you do, the more quicker you are going to learn how to mix two paints. That's the easiest way. You don't have to do any color charts or anything. Just pre-mix your paint. Sorry, just mix your paint every 5 minutes every time you go back to your palette. Okay, so that's what I did. So I highly recommend doing that. The next thing what I would like to say is you need to understand the pressure of, like, pressure through which you need to transfer the paint from your brush. So you need to understand, so you need to learn how much pressure your hand is able to, like, allow to transfer the paint from the brush to the canvas. Now, the brush should be very quiet. Like, we think that the brush should make the mark, but that's not actually, like, it's not actually true. You need to have enough paint on the brush that the brush is only used to transfer the paint. Like, this should be very quiet. Like, it should be like a very silent conductor, and music should be produced with the paint that's on your brush. So anytime you feel that you are adding more work with your brush, it means that you don't have enough paint on your brush. Okay, so always load the paint as much as you can from your palette and almost have like a layer of it between your canvas and the brush, and just use the brush to transfer the paint. Now, the way you transfer is that you need to understand the pressure that you have to make that stroke. It can be a heavy stroke, or it can be a light stroke, or it can be an average stroke, right? So you need to be sensitive with your arm movement to allow that pressure to happen more naturally. So that's another thing that I wanted to share. Now, if you have been doing this for a while, like one of my students, she just told me that she was having issue with having muddy colors. So that, like, the next stage would be that you have already added enough layer on the canvas, right? If you already have enough layer on the canvas, and if you're doing wet on wet, like, all my work is mostly wet on wet, unless I don't go back to it for like a week or two and it's completely dried out. Most of my work are done wet on wet. So the only way you can have a good painting without getting muddy colors when you already have enough layer is that point that you need to lay the paint. You need to know how to hold the brush, whether it's like vertically or horizontally. When you hold it horizontally, you are able to gain maximum area of this brush. And with the pressure that you have, you should be able to understand if you're able to transfer the paint without disturbing the layers underneath it. Okay, so you need to allow your wrist to become another eye, like, in a way that when you're doing the work, you need to understand the pressure of how much you need to transfer without disturbing the layer underneath it. Now, let's say you have a very heavy layer, and that no matter how lightly you do it, it doesn't work. So in that case, you need to know then that the layer that you already have, if it's important or not. Because if you are anyway going to do a heavy layer on top of it, the layer underneath it may not be required, right? It may not be required at all. So you need to know if that area is your area of interest or not. If that area is not the area of interest, then you can just wipe off the excess and just add your fresh layer on top of that. If that area is your area of interest, then you should avoid having too many colors in that area. The main reason is that when you have 2 or 3 different colors in an area of interest, then the impact of those 3 gets divided by 1/3. If you have just one color in the area of interest, then the impact is the highest. If you have 3 colors, it gets cut down by 1/3. If you have 5 colors, it gets cut down by 1/5. So for example, in this painting, so you can see here that it's a very heavy, like I don't know if you can even see, but it's a heavy layered, there you go. So as you can see, the layering here is very, very heavy. But for example, over here in the area of white, if I had added another color, the white wouldn't have been that impactful. Now, because the area over here is quite large and without any obstruction except for these blue marks over here, this area has got a highest impact. Now, even if there was a layer underneath it, the white would have gotten affected because white is a very strong color and it can mix with any color very instantly. So if you have any color that you feel that is very impactful for you, just try to avoid having other colors underneath it because they are going to get affected anyway, right? And you're going to lose that color which you wanted in the very first place. So that's another thing which I wanted to share. So let's see if there was another point which I wanted to, yeah. The next thing I wanted to share, which I already did, was to limit your strokes to under 2 or 3. Like after you have done 1 stroke, 2 strokes, you should be able to finish the paint from your brush. Again, your brush is not there to mix the color on the canvas. You can move the paint on the canvas, but try not to mix the paint on the canvas. So keep your brush as your silent guide, and just after every 2 or 3 strokes, go back to your palette and load the paint, have enough layer, and go back. Okay, so end your strokes after every 2 or 3. Again, this is not something in every beginner can adapt quickly, but at least if you have it in the back of your head, you will know that you are going to go through this process, right? So we have a question from Jim here. Always struggle with mixing colors to where I want them, especially when doing portraits. Any tips? So yeah, so it doesn't matter if it's portraits or landscape. What I would recommend is that any object when you're doing in painting, it's either light or shadow, like if you want the 3D effect. Now in the light and shadow, we have the warm and the cool. Like we have the warm colors, we have the cool colors. Again, in the shadow, we have the warm color and the cool color. Now you need to have a specific idea as to what your intended brushwork is going to do, right? So for example, if I have my light hitting this part of the face, so this part of the face is going to be warm, like in the light area, and this part is going to be in my dark area, right? So in whatever is coming ahead is going to be warm, whatever is going back, it's going to be cool. So once you have established that idea as to where my warms are and where your cools are, then you can mix the appropriate paint and apply in that intended area, if that makes sense, right? And just try to mix your paint within your secondary or tertiary. Do not go beyond that. If you start going beyond that, then again, you are going to lose that vibrancy in your artwork. Okay, so I hope that helps. So, so these are just few of the tips that I've shared here. I have made a guide. I know some of you have already received it. So I have laid down 7 essential brushwork tips that's highly recommended for beginners, even before they start understanding what the value is, what the edges are, what the composition is. So once you're able to really hone in on your brushwork skills, you can have that strong foundation upon which you can start understanding how the values work and how the color works, how the edges work. So this was the another painting which I had done yesterday. Again, it's a very heavy painting. Like layering is very heavy in this. And if you see in this area, I've I initially had this orange color going all the way up here, right? And if I want to lay down this heavy texture, I don't need that orange below that. Or I can have a very thin layer of orange below that, which allowed me to add this yellow and white on top of it. So I was able to get away with it without affecting my yellow and white. So this way you can keep the vibrancy in your artwork by just simplifying the way you lay down the paint and to remove what's not required. Okay, so I'm going to share this painting again in the group, and I'll just make some remarks on the steps to do it as well. So yeah, so please use that guide. I'm gonna link it in the comments section below, and you can use that guide to as you progress in your oil painting journey. So do you have any other questions before I call it? So before I go, I wanted to share this palette. I think it was Wendy who had asked me to show. Again, I don't have a clean area over here, but I just wanted to share what I have right now. So the way I have this is that I have all my cools here and have all my warms here. Usually I had my um, cools down here, I had my warms down there, and I had my white over here. But again, this one is, I just use this for my classes and things like that. So that's why I have the small one. The way I do this arrangement is that for over 3 to 4 years, I first started out with just basic palette with just blue, yellow, and the red and the white. But over time, I just wanted more vibrancy and I just wanted a bit more uh, crispness in my paints. So I slowly added and I slowly removed what was not working for me. So right now I have one warm and cool of every primary, and with an addition to um, Naples yellow over here, and yeah, just Naples yellow over here. So I have removed some paints before and I've added some paints after. So this one is a very personal uh, setup. You may not use this at all, but it's going to help you develop your style over time. Like as you develop as an artist, you will know which colors you need and which colors you don't need. And it's not that you need to exactly mix the color what's out there. You have to have that vision as to what the idea that you want to convey in your artwork, and that idea can come up with having your own set of colors and going after that and believing that it's going to work no matter what the reference is telling you. So that's how you develop your own style and your voice. Okay, and the way I have it over here is that I usually do a lot of artwork, so I have my palette very wet most of the time. But if it's gone for a week where I have not done any work, yes, the paint does dry. I usually keep it in my studio because it's a bit cold over here, so the oil stays inside. But during this summer where there's a lot more evaporation of the oil, you get this uh, wet wet palette carrier. I think it's I don't know the brand, but on Amazon it's like this big waterproof sealed plastic box, and it's like 12 by 16 big, and you can keep this palette inside it, and it stays wet for a very long time because it completely seals it. So if you have a plastic box with a seal on it, you can drop your palette inside that, and it's going to stay wet at least for 2 weeks at least. Okay, so I hope that helps. Uh, I think it was Wendy who asked me that question. So I'm going to link the brushwork techniques guide in the comments below. And also, if you're interested in growing as an oil painter and want to fast track your journey and develop your own style and your own voice, the enrollments for my art program, which is the Creative Leap Academy, have begun for the month of November. So if you're interested, let me know, drop in the comments. It's a completely structured course from absolute beginners to, if you've been doing painting for a while, I will take you all the way. So if that's something that you want and you want to see growth quick, let me know. I'm here to help. And if you have any questions, you can drop in the comments as well. All right. Thank you so much. I hope I'll see you tomorrow or day after. If you have any other questions, let me know in the group. All right. Bye-bye.